Riverside.
Welcome to Dance Talk with Joanne Carey, where the dance world connects, the conversations inspire, and where we are keeping them real. I'm your host, Joanne Carey, and today I'm joined with Candace Thompson-Zachery. She's the co-executive director of an organization called Dance NYC. I always say New York City, but it's Dance NYC. So I'm excited to have her here with me today. We're going to be talking about a lot of important information out there. There was a recent report that was run, and we're going to talk about the findings, where we go from here, all the type of advocacy that the organization does. So welcome, Candace, to Dance Talk.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
Thank you so much. So I'd like to start with just a little bit of a background about yourself, who you are, how you got involved in dance, what your dance career is like now, apart from the advocacy you're doing in the organization, and then we'll talk about the organization.
Sounds good. Yeah. So, Candace Thompson-Zachery, as you said, I use she, her pronouns. I have been in New York for about 20 years, actually, this year. I'm originally from Trinidad and Tobago, which is in the Caribbean. And I came here to pursue dance. So I came here to go to university, graduated with a BFA in dance from Adelphi, and then stayed in the city dancing with a lot of different, mainly independent choreographers, but a few more mainstream companies. And that work took me into developing more curiosity and relationships in the Caribbean dance community, because I wanted to just see be a part of that community and really grow the people who were involved specifically in Caribbean dance. So I started doing a lot of self-producing. I ran a festival called the New Traditions Festival for a number of years, which was a platform to showcase Caribbean dance choreographers in New York City. And then from that work, I kind of ended up here in dance administration, working at Dance NYC. So I have a kind of a varied background in terms of the kind of dance that I practiced. I did a lot of contemporary modern work, but then also a lot of Afro-Caribbean dance work as well. Balancing both sort of the administrative side of dance, doing self-producing, stage managing, every job, honestly.
Yes. Everything.
And then also now more in the research and advocacy space.
Nice. So you have a real varied background, which is wonderful. And so many artists tend to have that as well. So why don't we talk about Dance NYC? If you can tell everybody what the organization is, what it's about, when it got started, and then we can talk about your involvement.
Yeah, so Dance NYC is a service organization that serves the dance industry and community in the 5 boroughs, and then a few of the outlying areas, Long Island, Suffolk County, Nassau, a few places upstate, and a few counties in New Jersey. So we serve the industry, and our mission really is to promote the knowledge, appreciation, practice, and performance of dance. And the way that I think about it is really that our work is to affect the landscape within which dance happens. So we aren't necessarily a one-to-one organization, but we're trying to change the environment within which dance work takes place. So that happens typically through our 5 program areas, which one of them is leadership, convening, and networking. So we gather people so that they can get emerging updates about what's happening, to talk a little bit about justice, equity, and inclusion in dance, and to really help leaders and practitioners and workers progress their practice of both the business of dance and also just the interrelational parts of dance. We also do research, which is the study that you mentioned at the top. Research specifically on the dance industry, because without us, that research typically doesn't happen, or dance is not included in a really strong way. We do re-granting, so we work with foundations, the city government, to get money to then redistribute to dance workers and organizations. We do communications technology and visibility work. So we have a website that's the place that a lot of people find us first. We have a free community listings page where you can list events that are happening. You can list audition notices. You can list opportunities for people to volunteer, to work jobs get listed on there. So a lot of people find out about us because of how robust that tool is. And we also have a hub that we'll talk about a little bit later. And then the last thing that is part of our service, but maybe is not explicit, is that we tend to represent the dance industry on committees, councils, advisory groups to make sure that the dance industry is well represented.
Wow, that's a lot. I mean, that's a great rounded organization. When did the organization begin?
I want to say 12 years ago. We 12 years ago as our own nonprofit. Before that, we existed, but we were an offshoot or a satellite office of the national dance organization, Dance USA.
Oh,
So
okay.
we existed for a number of years as a satellite office of their organization,
Right.
and then we became our independent nonprofit about 12 years ago.
That's wonderful. And 12 years is still a pretty young organization. But you've done so much already. And I say that because I'm sure you've heard of Dance New Jersey. Are you?
Yes.
Yes.
I
So many years ago, I served for 5 years on the board of Dance New Jersey. Yeah. So, and that had been, it had started and then it was kind of, not working for a while. And then I was on the resurgence of it. And so for 5 years, I sat on that board, really spearheading dance and dance advocacy and dance, obviously, in New Jersey. And it has grown and really blossomed. So I feel like when I hear what you're saying and how Dance NYC has blossomed and that offshoot from Dance USA, I see the parallels and all of a sudden my head's like turning with all kinds of things. So, I mean, it's really great because advocacy is so important for the dance industry on so many levels that people don't necessarily realize. Like an audience member might not necessarily realize if it's not brought to their attention. And I think organizations like this does that. And it's for the side of the dancer, but it also brings to light what is needed around. Do you want to talk about that a little bit? Like what the needs are, apart from the report that we're going to get to and the census, but what those needs seem to be right now in the dance industry that you're finding?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a lot of recurring themes, right? And we talk a little bit about this actually in our ongoing campaign that we started last year called the Our New City Dance Campaign. But one is dance is not typically valued or respected or protected. So, we don't have enough dance in our education system. So, we're not necessarily cultivating that next group of leaders, audience members, champions for the arts because they're not getting exposed to it at a young age. Dance work is typically, and this is not unique to dance, but I think dance feels it in a different way. Typically people value the artistry, the thing that they get to see or watch, like a piece of art on the wall, or they come to a show and they see the show, but they don't value necessarily what goes into it or the people that are a part of building it. And so dance, we really feel that heavily. And it shows up again in the way that we have to interact with presenters or people who are hiring us to perform, especially on the more commercial sides of things. It gets really tough when you have to basically explain to people like why, the pay that they're offering you is like not enough for you to actually do what they're asking for. And so a lot of work goes into people figuring out how to, basically you have to learn how to negotiate and advocate for yourself because people don't typically understand what everything that goes into dancing and performing and presenting and even like a minute of choreography, how much is invested in that coming to life.
Yes.
I think that financial sustainability is a huge issue. It always has been, and it's even more so now. I'm sure you know about, how inflation has just skyrocketed like in the last 2.5 years. And that has hit the dance industry really hard. Organizations are feeling it. Individual workers are feeling it. When we did research in the pandemic, it showed where people were leaving, partially because of how hard it was to be able to stay. So that is an ongoing issue. Um, and then I think there are issues in dance that also relate to issues that everyday people are facing, which is that affordability is a huge thing. Access to rehearsal space, which is more of a dance specific thing, is getting harder just because either studio prices are increasing, they're less available, and if there are like subsidized spaces, they go so quickly. So just like access to accessible and affordable space is a huge thing that people are facing. And then this is more anecdotal, but there has been a decline in like festivals and presenting opportunities. And this is where I'm talking specifically more to small independent choreographers and organizations. Those like emerging dance festivals, emerging artist opportunities are getting less and fewer and fewer. So there aren't enough platforms for people to showcase what they're working on. And then, I might also just say that audiences' behaviors are changing. So, things like Broadway, especially, what I've heard is that those shows have moved up now because people aren't coming into the office every day in Manhattan, right? So it's just like the people that would typically be your audience are doing things differently, right?
Yeah.
They're staying at home in the depths of Brooklyn and not coming to Manhattan, or they're not doing that commute anymore. So I think all of those things are kind of affecting what's happening in the dance industry right now. And then the last thing I might just say is just, since 2020, it has really broken open this, the racial reckoning, right? Just people's understanding of racial equity and wanting to try to correct for those issues and how they manage their work. And I think that those issues, a lot of the issues that came up during that time are still being felt in terms of access to resources for different communities, the way that certain disciplines and genres are perceived or supported or showcased is still an issue. And with the current like political changes that are happening day by day, I think it's really also affecting dance organizations because they're trying to figure out how to respond and how to adapt.
Yes. I mean, so much. I mean, and you just talking about it and naming all those things, and you're the one dealing with it every day. Like your hands are in it. I'm hearing you say it and I'm like, wow. It's bringing me back to, I had a dance studio for 23 years. And during that time is when I was served on the board, and hearing those same issues, like you said, those issues are still there. We've made some progress, but there's so much progress that needs to happen. And when you talk about, the landscape changing, the audience changing too, and people, the affordability, and, shows can't run as long as they used to run. So many different things, like it's this downward spiral that starts to happen. But hopefully organizations like yours is helping to change that. How long have you been a part of Dance New York City?
I've been here for 5 years, a little over 5 years.
5 years.
Yeah.
And what was it that made you get involved with this organization?
Yeah. So in 2017, I was invited to join a task force that they were running related to an initiative called the Immigrants Dance Arts Initiative. So the broader initiative was really trying to address the kind of systemic barriers that immigrant dance workers or dance organizations were facing. And I was on the task force to basically be an advisor on how they could or should collect research, helping to promote the survey that they were putting out. And I got to help weigh in on how the reports were shaped in terms of narrative and like some of the policy recommendations that they included in that report. So I was on that task force maybe for about 2 years. And then a role opened up at Dance NYC at the end of 2019 that was the manager of justice, equity, and inclusion initiatives. And I was asked to step into the role. So that work really at the time was more focused on producing our public programs. So we used to have a an annual symposium. So that designing and producing that event was under my portfolio. All of the public town halls that we held that were largely around issues of justice, equity, and inclusion, and managing a lot of our task forces, and weighing in on some of the other work that we were doing related to our justice equity work. So yeah, I started and really leaning on my background as a producer and curator, because that's what my master's is in, to help shape the symposia and conferences and talks that they were doing.
Wow. And so your time there, have you seen a positive change? Have you seen, ebbs and flows? Talk about that a little bit. And what changes have you seen?
That's hard to
Yeah.
quantify.
Yeah.
Because I joined right before the pandemic.
Okay.
So it just felt, every day was a new day.
Yes. Yes.
Um, we stepped in really strongly to do relief work. So
Okay.
we raised about $1 million to redistribute to dance workers and organizations in relief funding. And so we were running multiple grant programs at the same time. It's also how we got so deeply ingrained in a lot of the advocacy, especially at the city level, because we also had data that could tell, like some of the city council representatives who were helping to inform city budgets, and some of the people in the administration, like these are the real issues that we're seeing. Like, the thing that I think Dance NYC does well is collect data. And so when we did all of our relief funding, we kind of attached a survey to it. And so it made sure that we got like really robust data about what people were experiencing, so that we could communicate that information to people in city government about, hey, listen, our dance workers are really struggling right now. This is what they're seeing. They can't buy groceries. They can't pay rent. They're out of their jobs. The hospitality industry where they also work is shut down. We need an intervention. So, we were in that kind of like pandemic response mode for about 2 years, just trying to like galvanize support around relief funding and working with other partners to do some of that work. I will say maybe the thing that I have noticed is that there, especially, and this was true for everyone. I don't think dance was special to this. When we were home, a lot of us were home in the pandemic. And, the thing I will say is that there are people for whom like working remotely was already a thing. So we'll have to remember that, especially our friends, our people in the disability community have been leaning on this for a long time. However, people had time to see what was happening and to be more involved. I think that for the dance community, it meant that people were more wanting to be more involved in advocacy or taking action or organizing with their communities. And so we did see sort of an increase in attention to that work, which is a good thing, right? We want people to be aware of the kind of changes that are happening that are affecting them, and for them to use their power and leverage to influence those decisions in ways that would benefit the dance community and most times the broader community. So yeah, I think that's the main thing that I can say in terms of a change, is like our community's attention to some of these advocacy issues. And then perhaps the other thing that has changed, and which is similar to that, is that there is a growing labor movement in the arts and in dance. And so I have seen that like really rise and take off during my time here. It's not because of me. This is just me like paying attention to what's happening. But that growing labor movement has like steadily increased.
Yeah. And then when you say that, are you referring to like the awareness of, and the talks about the contracts and the insurance and like all those types of things, like insurance and the dancer contract and fair pay and all those things that we've seen in the news, or like, the dance news. Yeah. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which is, I mean, it's huge because, for years, at least to my knowledge, it was never talked about or in the forefront, or, it just was accepted.
Yep.
It just was accepted. And then, now when dancers have to really advocate for the artists, but we're talking about dance specifically right now,
Yep.
have to advocate for themselves. And I think on top of everything else that they're doing, whether they're in a company or not, or they're an individual artist, the advocacy for themselves alone before they even advocate for somebody else or their company or a group. It's difficult. I'm seeing more and more of it, and I'm hearing more and more of it with the artists I'm speaking to on the podcast as well. So it definitely, I've seen that shift. Yeah. So, and it's a good shift, I think, just so that dancers are aware of what's happening for themselves and find a voice,
Correct.
find a voice.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the State of New York of NYC Dance 2023 report. Let's talk about that report. Can you tell everyone what that was, when it was done, and then we can, talk about the findings of it.
Yes. So it was published at the end of 2023. And it is our report where we analyze or reflect on the state of the industry. It is a report that we've done multiple times. The 2023 version is our fifth iteration. But we made significant changes to the way that we were collecting and analyzing the data for 2023 in response to everything that we had experienced like in the last 4 or 5 years. And so the initial report as it existed would typically just analyze data from what used to be called the cultural data profile, which is data that people had to input if they wanted to get city funding.
Oh, okay.
Right? But that meant that the data would only basically collect information from nonprofits.
Right.
So if you were a for-profit entity, we wouldn't have any information about you. If you were an individual worker, we wouldn't have information about you. And if you were like a fiscally sponsored group or like an unincorporated group, we didn't know about you. And so the thing that we did for the 2023 version was to launch a census, which was trying to count as many dance workers as possible. And it focused on collecting information both from individuals and organizations. And we opened the range of what an organization, the word we used was entity, could be. So you could be fiscally sponsored, you could be a sole proprietorship, you could be a for-profit entity. We opened that gate as wide as we could because we wanted to get the breadth of what we know the dance community to be, so that the information and the findings that we would be able to report on would be as representative as possible of the industry and everything that it was experiencing, how it works, who's in it, all of that. And so the report itself, we structured it to lead with these 10 findings and some of the data that we found that support those findings, which we can get into.
Yeah, let's get into those findings let's talk about them.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
So I would say there's like 3 big buckets, right? One is around the financial experience of our individual workers, right? And the fact that they're not getting paid a lot. I think the average annual salary for dance workers from dance is about $23,000 a year, right? And that makes up about 60% of their income. Another thing that we learned was that about 50% of the people that we surveyed are working 4 or more jobs to make ends meet.
4 or
right?
more.
They're working.
4 or more jobs. Yes, I remember those days.
Yes, me too. And we also found that there's a large interconnection between dance, education, health and wellness, and hospitality. So dance workers are working in all of those other industries. And so they're kind of like a reciprocal exchange, right? They're either presenting in education organizations, they are full-time educators, or they are teaching artists, or they're working in hospitality and dancing. So we saw a lot of interconnectedness with those other industries. We also saw that organizations are struggling financially. About 40% of organizations said that their financial health was really weak. People don't have a lot of reserves. About over 50% said that they don't have reserves to fall back on if anything happens. And that contributed income, which is that fundraising money that people raise, is the majority of people's funding. And it has grown from the last time that we surveyed people, which is something when we notice that, we typically say it's not great because it means that your income, you have less control over your income, right? We also noted issues around justice and equity in terms of the fact that a lot of organizations still don't really have really good diversity, equity, and inclusion policies. Many of them are still not able to really accommodate working with or providing experiences for people from the disability community, people who are disabled. In terms of how diverse our ecosystem is, the dance industry is, it's still kind of lagging behind the demographic makeup of New York City. So it's not as diverse as our city is, basically, which is like sort of the goal we typically want for our industries. And then a kind of interesting finding around, and not interesting, but it kind of helps you put things in perspective. And I'll talk about this in two ways. One is that despite how hard things were, we found that dance workers, which are still considering that their careers are fulfilling and that they still think that their dance careers are long-term careers that they will stay in.
Yeah.
Right. So there's that thing about, it's really tough, but people actually believe in the work so much and that it probably provides them with such a sense of agency and power and connectedness to who they are that they will find creative ways to work around the kind of issues that they're facing. And then related to that, more on a organizational level, perhaps, is that organizations are being led by an ethos that says that the dance should happen regardless of the resources available, right?
Yeah.
And so, people are still making work even if they don't have the funding for it. They're relying on volunteers. They're volunteering or subsidizing their own labor to make things happen. They're bartering with friends to make it happen. They're paying, they're not able to pay their workers really great wages because they so believe that the work is the most valuable thing and the work will have such an impact so that they have to do it despite what's available. And so, we could look at that as a really positive thing because of how deeply that connection and belief is. And then we can also look at it as something that's, in a sense, also hurting us, right? Because it means that it's this like weird cycle.
It is a weird cycle. I'm sorry I'm interrupting you. It is a weird cycle. Continue, because I'll comment when you're finished. Yeah.
I think the last thing that I'll name is just like the nature of dance work. Most dance workers are typically freelance workers, so they're not working as an employee with one company. They're working with multiple companies. They're working from gig to gig. They're doing short-term projects. They're piecing together their dance careers, which also means that they don't have the type of benefits that people who work for a sole employer have. So things like retirement, access to really robust healthcare, dental healthcare, unemployment, right? They're typically being classed as 1099 workers, which means that safety net, that social safety net that you get when you're an employee, a full-time employee, I should say, they don't get. And so that's a problem.
Yes. When you're talking about all these things, it's like I feel that the anxiety rising in me because because of the experience, and I experienced it in different ways. One as a dancer, when I was performing, the multiple jobs, the multiple ways of making ends meet, because I was so passionate about it and I knew that's what I wanted to be doing. And then as a studio owner, and I say this, or let's classify it as an arts organization, right? And the challenge of that, you have your ebbs and flows. You have, really great years. You have really bad years. You have those mediocre years. But I always felt like, so I can speak from personal experience, to the outside world, people have this misconception that you're rolling in the dough. You must be rolling in the dough. And I'm so sorry that I'm saying that, but I'm not sorry at the same time because I really don't talk about it that often. And the thing is, like you were saying earlier, people don't realize everything that goes into that final product that you're going to produce, that people are going to come and see, whether it's a studio and it's the parents coming, it's the, whatever that is. And all those people have to be paid. But then you do have your slew of volunteer people, and you're trying to be fair, and you're trying to pay what people are worth. But it's, at some point you max out. You just max out. And I can say, I personally got to the point where I had my studio for 23 years. 23 years. Yes. And loved every minute of it. I really loved every minute of it. And I was starting to feel like, gosh, I just don't know if I can keep going like this. And other things too. But if we're going to talk about financial, those hard facts.
Yeah.
It's very real. And I say it for listeners, it's very real that, when your landlord keeps raising your rent, and
Correct.
how much can you raise your tuition? How much can you really
before you start losing students,
people to
can't
pay?
afford it anymore.
How much can you ask people to pay for tickets? It's all this trickle down effect. And at some point, you can't personally keep putting in personal money. You get to a point too, like, well, I need to really look at this, the health of it, your own, like you were saying, the mental health, the emotional health. I believe in it. I believe in dance. I love it so much, but it really is. And this advocacy work, I think, is so important that you're doing. But I just had to put that little input in because I lived it, I experienced it, and it's very, very real. And for listeners, for listeners who are not in the dance industry, I'm not complaining. I just want you to understand it's real. And when we talk about it and reach out for help and for fundraising and for all those things, it's for need. It's really need. So that's my little plug there.
Yeah, no, and it's necessary to say that because, one of the things like I was mentioning earlier was this issue of value and respect for our art form. I think as someone who was pursuing dance performance as a primary career for a long time, despite all of the financials, if we just hold that aside for a second, the kind of lack of understanding and respect that I faced in dealing with the public, with people I was working with people who hired me, I think adds very big insult to injury in terms of how the work happens. And so getting people to just have an understanding and an appreciation of everything that you're putting in. It's I agree to work for whatever fee that we're working on, but can we be equal partners in this, right? Can you value the investment that I'm making into your project? Because we know that we're both working with limited resources.
Yeah.
I am participating in this because of how much I believe in it. Can that work and investment be acknowledged? And I think that acknowledgement piece is a big piece of what's missing from just broader society's understanding of how the dance industry functions. And it's one of the things that we hope we can help shift. It's yes, we have to address the financial issue and just the viability of our industry from, trying to target the larger systems like funding from governments, from government entities, funding from philanthropy. But we also need to target just this societal issue of just dance not being valued and respected and that not being acknowledged, the kind of impact we make in our communities, in our schools, in our institutions. And so that's a very critical piece.
Yes, and thank you for saying that too, because you're so often, Candace, I'm on here talking with artists who also talk about, it was that one teacher or that one experience or that one show they saw that changed their life and made them, perhaps they were going to be on the street and now they found dance class, or, there's so much that art, but again, we're talking about dance, that dance provides and gives, and for everybody. Yeah. So I just had to add that as well. Yeah. So when you say, or the organization says, the State of NYC Dance, I know we probably covered that a little bit, but can you talk what that means? Like when we say the State of NYC Dance, talk about that in layman terms.
Yeah, it means it's that we're trying to understand how are people conducting their work and business lives in dance, right? How do they live? Where do they live? How old are they? What race or ethnicity are they? What types of organizations are they running? Are they running fiscally sponsored groups? Are they running mainly nonprofit entities? Are they hiring people as contractors? Are they hiring them as employees? How many people have savings versus how many people don't? How many people live in close proximity to people that are support system versus don't? So we're really trying to understand how the industry is operating so that we could identify what the needs are and then propose recommendations for ways to address those issues.
Yeah.
So the State of New York City Dance is really trying to figure out how does it operate and what are the needs.
Yes. And thank you for saying that. And I also would like you to explain something for listeners too. Can you talk about, nonprofit and for-profit? Because so often the misconception is a nonprofit can't make a profit. And that's so inaccurate. And that's not at all what it means. So if you could, take a little time to explain that, I think that would be really helpful.
Yeah, no, of course. Nonprofit means that you are a mission-driven organization that receives a tax break from the government, and you are allowed to raise funding, but all of your activities and funding need to go towards serving the mission that your organization is chartered to serve. And you typically have a board of directors that are responsible for the mission being carried out. And your finances are audited every year to make sure that you are spending the money that you are given well, and that your activities are for the public good. And yes, you do still need to either at least maintain break-even operations. And for nonprofits, if you have a surplus, that goes into something called reserves for a rainy day, right? Or it goes into investing in your capacity to expand your service delivery to act on your mission. So it does not mean that you don't make a profit. It means that your profits are then reinvested in the mission to continue your organization's work. So talking about just like nonprofit models is also a thing that we end up talking about a lot, just because we have to continuously prove that we need investment as well.
Yes, and the boards too, because you have, when I say you, I mean people, organizations have paid board members and non-paid board members. Can you talk a little bit about that too, just so people have that knowledge? And it's okay to be a paid board member. Your organization has to work. Those people are working. So if you could talk a little bit about that as well.
Yeah, but boards operate differently, but a lot of boards, their primary role is governance. Again, making sure that the mission is being carried out or acted upon. And most boards have something called a gift-get policy, right? That your board members are either raising money for the organization so that it can continue its work, or they're donating or contributing money to the organization to continue its work. You also have boards that are more working boards where people are donating their time and expertise. And that's also viable, I guess, which is different from in the for-profit corporate sector where boards are paid positions, where people get paid to sit on them because they are responsible for making sure that shareholders' investment is being safeguarded. So that's sort of a difference. And then not-for-profits, for-profit entities like LLCs or S corps are, business entities that have some kind of limited liability, right? They're seen as an entity that is, has insurance and is responsible in case something happens, and that the person isn't responsible. But those entities are typically meant to gain a profit, and you pay taxes based on the amount of profit that you make.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Because I think that
Yeah.
also is important for people to understand. Can you talk about also, the dance workforce resilience hub? There's something, yeah, talk about that and we can dive into that a little bit.
Yeah, that's one of our more recent services in a sense. We released the hub at the same time as we released the 2023 report. And the hub is meant to be one of the vehicles for the work that we're doing around dance workforce resilience in general. I'll back up for a second and then get to the hub specifically. So Dance NYC organizes our work in these initiatives, and that's the way that we act on a specific issue. Currently, our focus is on economic justice for the dance industry. And so and we're calling it the Dance Workforce Resilience Initiative. So we're doing a number of projects underneath that initiative. One of them is the DWR Hub, this is what we call it for short. That is a one-stop shop for resources and tools to help people in their everyday working lives, both individuals and organizations. So the hub has a bunch of different areas. One is it does house the State of New York City Dance report. So all of the different report summaries, we have a compensation tool where you can see average wages for different roles in dance.
Okay.
So there's a lot of information broken down with the data from the report on the hub. We also have our New York City Dance campaign, which is our annual advocacy campaign that also lives on the hub. So you can stay connected to all of the actions that we're trying to promote. A lot of the data that supports what we're naming as issues, they are all listed on the hub. And then we have the DWR Resource Library, which is a filterable database of resources pertaining to different topic areas. So if you want resources on planning your finances, you could search for that. If you want resources on how to enact racial equity policies in your organization, you could look for stuff around racial equity. If you want to look at navigating your career as a freelance worker, you can look for things for that. So it's really we've pulled a lot of resources from different places and put it in one place so that people can find it easily. And then lastly, we just released a few months ago the Dance Workforce Directory, which is a directory where people can upload their profile, and again, sort of be searched by specific filters. So if I'm a dance worker, I can create a profile. By creating a profile, I will tell people the kind of skills I have, whether I can fundraise, write grants, create websites, direct, choreograph, do fitness and wellness. I could also list the kind of genres that I do: Afro-Caribbean, contemporary, modern, West African. So I can basically create a profile of the kinds of skills that I offer to the dance community, so that people can find me.
Oh, that's a great tool.
Yeah. So you can do it as an individual, and then you can also list your organization. Same kind of thing. Like, these are the services we offer. This is where we're located, so that people can find you.
Yeah. And that's these resources, and I say this again too, just from personal experience, I had mentioned that for, those 5 years I was on the board of Dance New Jersey, and, the resource, I pulled on those resources so often, within my organization, because those are my colleagues. Those are people that I was working with, people in the industry. And then I knew, because we were of the same, that same mission driven, that I could be like, hey, I can see if they can help me with this, or maybe I can borrow a teacher from them, or, I could call.
Correct.
And those are the types of things I think that this is offering, correct? Like,
Yeah, it's just like a tool to be discovered and a tool to collaborate and find people.
yeah, which is really wonderful. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I borrowed backdrops, you know, because I was
Yeah.
like, hey, can I borrow this or snow bag or, something, just
Yep.
simple. If it doesn't hurt to me, I always felt like it doesn't hurt to ask. Somebody can either say yes or they're going to say no. And, I didn't take it personal. I just was like, okay, I just can't do that. So those are really wonderful resources. Can you, tell the listeners, so if they're an individual, or an organization, get into how do they, register? Is it going on the website? Talk about that a little bit so people can know where to find all this.
So we have our main website is Dance NYC,
Mhm.
and that's where if you become a user of the website, you can submit to run ads. Like we
Mm.
have a paid ad system, so you can be listed on our website. You'll get run in our e-newsletter.
Mhm.
So there are different ways that we offer visibility opportunities that are paid through our website. You can also submit on our free community listings page if you have an event coming up,
Mhm.
if you want to post an audition notice, if you have a job, you're looking for an intern. So Dance NYC is where all of that information exists. It also lists just like all of our program areas. So if we have an event coming up, that's listed on the website. All of the a lot of the resource pages are still on our main website. It's also on the hub. I'll explain that later. Um, and a lot of all of our past research reports are also on our website. So there's a lot of resources on that main website, dance.nyc.
Okay.
You could also sign up for our newsletter to get a lot of the information that we continuously collect from the website. The other place that you can go is hub.dance.nyc. And
Okay.
that's where the hub is that I just described with the report, the resource library, the directory, the Audio City Dance campaign. That's all listed on the hub.dance.nyc. If you want to create your profile on the Dance Workforce directory, you can find it through the hub. So you go to hub.dance.nyc, go to Dance Workforce directory, and then you can submit your profile. It'll have to be approved. It doesn't take that long to get approved. And then it's up. And you can continuously make edits on your own. You can look at other people's stuff, but that's how you would access
That's
it.
a wonderful. Is there a fee or no fee for that?
No
No
fee.
fee. Look at it's free,
Yeah.
everyone. Yes. I mean,
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things we really wanted to make it a free and accessible
yeah, which is great.
space. Yeah, because some people don't have a website, and so it's just another way to have a digital presence.
Yeah.
That's one that's targeted around,
Yeah,
focused on.
and to know what's happening in,
Yeah.
in the dance world, like what's going on, what's, like you were saying, what audition is happening or what job posting or what you're available to do. So I think that's what a great resource. Talk a little bit about grants. So did you say at the beginning that the organization itself will dispense grants as well? Did I understand that correctly?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
So can you talk a little bit about that? Like, yeah, just talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, we currently have two main re-granting programs that we run. One is called the Dance Advancement Fund, which is a re-granting program focused on capacity building for smaller organizations, so under 250K budgets. And then we have something called the Rehearsal Space Subsidy Program, which we run in partnership with the Mellon Foundation, and that is to provide spaces with funding so that they can offer subsidized rehearsal space.
That's great.
Yeah, so those are our main two programs. We have run a number of programs in the past, and some of them are listed on the website, but they aren't active anymore at this time. So those are our main two.
Yeah, and grant writing is an art form in itself, But can you talk a little bit about, like, if you can, like, just give some do's and don't tips for those who are going to submit a request for something, or if you even have that, because if you have two things on the same page, they're exactly the same, and you're going to choose one over the other, What
Yeah.
can that be?
I can answer that a question obliquely
Yeah.
because what people may not necessarily understand is that when we have, especially for something like the Dance Advancement Fund that funds small organizations, where people do submit a proposal based on um, outline that we create, we aren't we aren't choosing. There's a panel of
Right.
artists that
Oh,
then
that's great.
have, yeah, they are the ones that review each application and, in a sense, narrow down our final pool. Or, what we end up being mainly, our work is really just about just eligibilities. Like, do people have all of the requirements? But after that, then it's really on the panel to choose who gets selected.
Yeah.
And so I don't have clear tips other than read the directions very carefully.
Yes, read them very carefully. Yes.
Yeah. And also the thing I'll say is that we always offer what is called in the funding granting world technical assistance.
Okay.
We offer a webinar on how to apply and go through the process. Sometimes we offer office hours. So from 1 to 3, you could jump with someone on Zoom to help clarify anything that you may not understand. Sometimes we put out webinars on specific areas, like one on getting a budget, one on making your work samples accessible. So all of that, I think, is available on our YouTube, some of those webinars. But anytime we release a new free granting program, it comes with a lot of tools and resources to help people submit the best application possible.
Yes, and I encourage listeners, if you're thinking about doing that too, take the time to review those resources, review those webinars, or reach out while you're doing the application process, before you're doing it, because that application is really important, and you want to be able to put your best application forward. So, and I think that's wonderful that you offer that. I mean, there's so much. I mean, what a valuable organization. I mean, really, it's so rich in its resources, and I imagine growing. Which brings me to my next question: is where are we going from here? What are those next steps? What are the hopes for the future for the organization itself, and for the findings that you've had?
Yeah, we're gonna continue to promote the findings largely through our New York City Dance campaign. We're going to relaunch the campaign in March, towards the end of March. So people should sign up for our newsletter if they aren't already, to stay tuned about when it's being released. There's a lot of advocacy right now around the city budgets leading up to the end of June. There's advocacy also right now around the state budget. So those are some of the big things that are happening that we're working towards. We are continuing our work around the dance workforce resilience in general. So there may be some new programs coming online related to that. Again, sign up for the newsletter so that you can find out what that is. And then Dance NYC is also undergoing a strategic plan. So that should be finalized towards the end of the year. And that's really going to give us clarified, I should say, vision for what we'll accomplish in the next 5 years. So people should also stay tuned for when that gets released. But we're going to just continue our work. So we're going to continue providing resources. If people want to be, in the know and they want to participate and take action in advocacy, which they should, just again, pay attention to the kind of advocacy alerts and some of the things we post on social, because we really try to keep people informed and incentivize them to take action in support of our industry. And as the last thing I might say is just continue to also take care of each other, right? Sometimes when things are shifting quite so frequently and so on such a large scale, we lose sight of the people or lose a sense of the people around us, the people we interact with every day, like going to the studio or taking class or whatever. And in a sense, those are the people we kind of have to focus the most attention on, because that's where we have some control.
Yeah.
And so I would just if these are my parting words, it might be just to start small with the kind of change that you want to see in the dance industry.
Yeah. Thank you, Candace. I mean, that's wonderful advice. I mean, this has been a great conversation. So informative. I really hope the listeners, save this episode and listen and re-listen and sign onto the website and get their profiles set so that they can, be part of be part of the community and really access the community and offer their talents and what to the community as well. For the community that is, advocating for them. Candace, thank you so much for joining me on Dance Talk. It's really been a delight. I look forward to seeing what's happening. And when you have some more information, and you want to come back on and share it with us, please feel free. Thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, it's such a pleasure. Happy to catch up anytime.
Thank you, Candace. Thank you, everybody, for listening. This is Dance Talk with Joanne Carey. Follow us, like us, and share. Thank you, everybody.
Powered by Riverside.